So we're starting on the Montana section. If you go into Moodle, today we're going to cover section 1. And then when I'm done talking about this, then we'll go take a look at section 5, which is where the assignments are. Assignment number 1 is due on Tuesday, right? Next Tuesday, 4/26. And I'll show you that when I'm done talking about this section today. So the first thing that I'd like to look at, let's see, I think I can rotate this, is back to the same topic that we've talked about. And we're talking about it some more. And again, these are all reference materials that I've taken from different sources. And this is, you'll see kind of penciled in here on the side that it says that this is new law. And I'm going to compare that to the old law and show you how it kind of transitioned. But what this basically is talking about, and we've looked at these 3 items before, is how you make the determination between an independent contractor and employee. And what they say here in this first paragraph is that there's no one factor. It's a composite of a lot of things. We're going to do a little case study, I think, on Tuesday, and it's going to be one of the things that I ask you to do on the final. I'll give you some facts, and then I'll ask you to analyze it and try and figure out if you think they're independent or if they're an employee. And there's so many gray areas that I'm more interested in your analysis than just like the right or wrong answer. So I can guarantee that'll be a good, probably 8 or 10 point question on the final. So you need to feel really comfortable with this material. We've looked at it quite a bit. You should be able to tell me, what is behavioral control? Why don't we talk about that? What is behavioral control? If you come to work for me and you're going to provide me some services and I'm going to pay you and we're trying to figure out, are you independent or an employee? What does the behavioral control piece mean?
Isn't that how much control they have over what work you're performing?
Yeah, it's
how soon it gets done, how
yep,
you do it, all that.
Yep, all that kind of who, what, when, where, why. How do you do the work? What tools do you use? What processes do you use? When do you show up? How do you record what you've done, right? Those are all, if I can tell you all that, that's indicative that you're an employee, right? So behavioral control. So take a look at this. And again, I'm not going to, I'm lecturing off of this, but really what you need to do then is to go back through these and flag what you think is important. Because on the final, even though it's open book, you're not an open note, you're definitely not going to have time to look everything up, which is kind of a classic error for students that take open book tests. They're like, oh, I've got the book there, I can look anything up. It's like, you will totally run out of time.
So do you recommend printing this off?
It totally your call. I myself am, a little old school because I'm a lot older than you. I like paper and I like to mark it up and highlight it.
Well, yeah, I think they highlight versus using the computer.
Yeah, it's totally up to you. On the same, the same vein, I'm, also into sustainability and I don't like to use paper if I don't have to. So it's, it's totally your call. Okay, so this is the old law. And what happened was this was in effect, this was what the IRS gave us to work with for years and years and years. It was 20 points. And you kind of went and checked them off one by one. These 20 factors indicate whether someone's an employer and IC. Do they have to comply with instructions? Are they trained? Are they integral to the business operations? Do they have to personally do the services? So it was like this 20-point checklist. That was merged into the 3 categories probably about 10 years ago. So this is actually quite old now. But I just want you to know where the 3 categories come from. These are the concrete backbone of where the behavioral control, financial control, and perceived relationship came from. So you should be conversant with these as well. So when do you have to issue a 1099 again? It is at the end of the year. Do I do it for all my independents?
The 3 requirements,
Yep, and they are,
600 or more.
Yep.
If they're incorporated,
unincorporated.
unincorporated and their service.
Yep. So, and that's basically what this says. You've got to give the 1099s out if you pay more than $600 for a service to an unincorporated individual. And then this is called the VCSP, Voluntary Classification Settlement Program. This is what happened in 2014. And basically what it was is for employers that had misclassified people in the past. And it's like, and then they get sued or they get audited or whatever. And it's like they come in and they've been misclassifying people for a long time. So if you want to get out from underneath federal penalties, you have to show that these 4 bullets pertain to you. That you treated workers as non-employees. In other words, I treated you as independents. I sent you all your 1099s, and I'm not in court right now with an audit with you, and I'm not undergoing an employment tax audit. And basically what this says is, I'm coming clean, I've misclassified, I don't want to be penalized for all these years and all this misclassification. Can we wipe the slate clean and let me go forward without any penalties? And so that's called the VCSP. So you should be conversant with that. Again, here's another reiteration of the workers' classification. And basically, what does the IRS want you to be? They like it if you're classified as what? What do you think's easiest for them?
I don't know, would independent contractor be?
Well, so I send you a 1099 at the end of the year. Now what if you're most people, what do you have to go do? Find an accountant, because now you've got to do a Schedule C, right? And you're like, I don't really know what this piece of paper is anyways, I'm just going to file it in the round bin. And versus, take a look at these 2 pages as well, please. This is from the IRS's training guides, and just kind of reiterates what we've been talking about. So, yeah, and this paragraph that I highlighted here just basically says that it's not only that the taxes don't get paid, but they don't have workers' comp, they don't have SUTA being paid on them, they don't have health insurance, they're not part of the pension program, so there's a lot of issues that go with misclassification. Okay. So in Montana, we have this thing, and I want to make sure that you understand this because this can be a little confusing. We have the ability to apply for an independent contractor exemption. Now, if I own, for example, say I'm a painter, and y'all are on my crew, can I apply to exempt you guys from workers' comp? Never. What this is about is I'm applying to exempt myself from workers' comp, which is totally stupid. I'm up on the ladders and the roofs and everything too. Are you kidding me? You know, you get injured and there you go. But with that said, there's a lot of single person shops. I do taxes for a ton of guys and gals that, drywall and lay flooring and paint, and it's just them. And they, honestly, they don't have the money to pay workers' comp. So what do? They file for an independent contractor exemption. And here's what it says right here. If you're a sole proprietor or a working member of a partnership or part of an LLC, my choices are twofold. For myself, I can either obtain workers' comp or I can get an exemption. And I can tell you if I'm a painter, and I'll pretend you guys don't work for me, it's just I'm a solo shop, and I go out and I want to bid on some jobs around town, everybody's going to ask me for either a copy of my workers' comp or my IC exemption, because they shouldn't let me on their work site without it, right? If I get an IC exemption, and we're going to take a look at it as part of your assignment for Tuesday, you're going to fill out an IC exemption. If you apply for an IC exemption, what you're saying is, I'm waiving my rights to workers' comp and unemployment. So that's a pretty significant decision. And again, that's only for yourself. It's never for your crew. You always have to provide workers' comp and unemployment for them.
What kind of percentage is workers' comp?
The percentages for workers' comp depends on your job. So like painting, they're going to say, are you an interior painter or an exterior painter? If you're interior, it's obviously probably going to be about half of what it's going to be if you're exterior.
Depending on the risk.
It totally depends on the risk. Somebody like myself, like how am I really going to get injured on the job? Pencil, yeah, trip and fall on a pencil, trip over one of these cords, blow out my knee, that's about it. And some are crazily expensive. I had a client that was a log liner, so he drove back in spring runoff and pulled the logs out of the woods, and they paid 50 cents on the dollar for workers' comp. So if you had a $15 an hour guy, you paid $7.50 an hour to workers' comp. So, because it was so incredibly high risk, right? So here's the exemption, and let's just take a peek at this. So you can see who administers it, and I'm going to from now on refer to this as the DOLI, because that's what they are, the Department of Labor and Industry, the DOLI. They administer SUTA, right? They do all of our wage claims. They do our independent contractor exemption. So they're basically workers' rights, Department of Labor and Industry. And you can see here, this is an exemption certificate application, and you have to pay $125 to get it. And it's good for 2 years. So, you're paying to exempt yourself from having to make other payments, aren't you? So you can see this is something you're going to have to fill out. It's all pretty self-explanatory. The occupation in part 3 is whatever it is that you're doing. I'm a painter, I'm a computer serviceman, I'm a landscaper, I'm a whatever. Here's the instructions to it. And then don't forget on your homework, when you do your IC exemption, this waiver has got to be attached, where they make you go and initial item by item by item by item. I'm waiving workers' comp. I swear that I'm an independent contractor. I swear I'm independently established, etc., etc. So your IC exemption isn't good without this waiver, and everything's got to be individually initialed. And then you don't have to do this, obviously, but then in the real world, you would go and get it notarized and write a check for $125 and send it in. Now, here's another thing that you've got to attach. You've got to provide documentation showing 15 points of this list that shows that you're independent. So, for example, and it's any way that you want to put together 10 points, or 15 points, excuse me. So, like, if you want to get 6 points, you show that you've got commercial liability insurance, or you filed a Schedule C in the past, or you've gotten 1099s, okay? That's worth 6 points each. 3 points, you can see, do you have like a county business license? Do you advertise on the internet? Do you have a business bank account? Things like that. And then very small points, do you have a vehicle registered to the business name? Do you have a business telephone number, a business credit card? So it doesn't matter how you do it, but you need to prove that you can put together 15 points from this list. And you've got to photocopy those documents and send it. Otherwise, they're not going to give you an IC exemption because you can't really prove you're independent. And you really should be an employee. Okay, what's this for? Yeah, what is it for?
To get your tax numbers.
Yeah, that's what I give you if I've determined you're independent. What do I do with the W-9? Do I send it somewhere? I don't. I just keep it. I just keep it. I put the information into my software, and then at the end of the year when it's time to cut 1099s.
And then the 1096 is transmittal with all the 1099.
Yep. Sure is. Yep. So this is just a very simple one-page piece of paper. You come work for me. I've got like a lot of my guys that have small crews. I will tell you, these guys are not the best with paperwork. They get to the end of the year and they're like, so what about that 1099 thing? And I'm like, every year I give them W-9s. You've got to give these to the people that come to work for you so that I know where to send the 1099s at the end of the year. And then they're digging on the bottom of their truck looking for them. But at any rate, this is what you give to the person. All it asks for is a name, social security number, and are they a corporation or, you know, an LLC, or what are they? Here's the 1099. You've seen this before. What box do you think that you fill in when you pay somebody that's not an employee, that's an independent? Where do I put the amount? I've seen people put it in other. It really belongs in box 7, non-employee comp. I'll see it in other sometimes, but it really belongs in box 7. Okay, so that's basically it for that first section in Moodle. Pretty straightforward. We're also going to look at section 2 today, which is contractor registration. This is also a part of your first assignment. And this is also Montana state law. Has anybody here heard of this, contractor registration? Basically what it is if you are in the building industry, you're required to register with the state and show that you have appropriate workers' comp. And the reason that they want you to do this is that they want to make sure, and this is, you can see about a 20-year-old law, 21-year-old law, they want to make sure, kind of this very last one, that the playing field is leveled by making sure that you're complying with labor laws, that you're paying workers' comp, that you've got unemployment. So they feel like if they have a database of contractors, that they'll be able to assure that you're complying with the rules. Okay? So it applies to all contractors and subcontractors, so it doesn't matter whether you're commercial or residential or what it is that you do. Do you lay carpet or do you frame out huge steel buildings? You have got to get registered with the state of Montana. Notable exceptions. If you're working on your own property, you don't have to. If you're the person that brings in, say, the backhoe to rent to somebody, you don't have to register because you're not actually a contractor. You're just renting the machinery to a contractor. If you're doing anything related to farming or ag, you don't have to register. And if you're an electrician or an architect or a plumber that's operating within the scope of their license, you don't have to register. And if you're doing anything under $500, you don't have to register. Everybody else has to register. Okay, so here it's basically, this is from Montana Code Annotated, which means our Montana state law. It's basically saying that all incorporated construction contractors and subcontractors with employees must register. And the department prepares a list of everybody. And if they don't register, there's a penalty of up to $500. And then I'm not going to sit here and read this to you, but you need to be conversant with this. I'll be asking you about it on the exam, on the final. And these are just, the FAQs, the frequently asked questions. How do I get registered? What if I don't have any employees? What's the penalty if I don't? I only do a few odd jobs. Well, they say here, if you don't get up to $2,500 for a job, you don't have to register. And then here's the application. This is also, so we saw earlier that you're going to be doing the IC exemption for this homework, for this first assignment. You're also going to be doing one of these, construction contractor registration. And this is a, I think, 3-page form. And let me just tell you here on this second page, students seem to get confused. Can you see this well enough to actually read this first line? So if I'm filling this out for my company, I'm going to put the name of the company, mailing address, city and state, my zip code, say I own 60% of the company. Am I a working member or manager in Montana? That's if I'm an LLC, yeah. And then what does this ask? And how do you know what to answer there? Have you elected Montana workers' comp, yes or no?
Wasn't that what we talked about before, whether you filed for it?
Yeah, exactly. If you haven't filed for an exemption, then your answer is yes. You have elected to have workers' comp. If you file for an IC exemption, then your answer is no. Okay. Otherwise, pretty straightforward. You have to pay $53 for it. It tells you where to send it. And that is all there is to that. So we kind of flew through both these. I want to take you and spend a couple minutes going over the first assignment so you know where you're going. So if you go back, let's see. If you go back here, all the homework is under section 5. So go ahead and pull this up and just take a couple minutes, if you would, and look through assignment number 1, and then we'll talk about it. I'll give you a couple minutes to read it and jot down any questions you might have, and then we'll take a look at it together.
Do you remember which day she said Tuesday, what day?
For the finals?
Yes.
Oh, she didn't say. No, the date.
Oh,
She didn't mention the date.
So what I'm asking, did you get a chance to read through it? So what I'm asking you to do here is a couple things. Down in the instructions, the critical piece here is that you are employed as the accounting supervisor. So Mr. Hanson is relying on you. You just finished this payroll class and you told him that he should apply for an independent contractor exemption. He owns this wallpaper shop, but say he doesn't, and he just drives around and drinks coffee and tells us creeps what to do. So he doesn't really need to be covered. That's costing him a couple $100 a month. So you tell him that he needs to get an IC exemption. In addition, you tell him, we're required by law to have a construction contractor's registration, and he hasn't been doing that. So he agrees to all that, and he asks you to do the paperwork. So we saw where the paperwork was. You need to just print that out. You're going to complete it by hand because it's PDF. You can't fill it in, right? Okay, you're not a distant student, blah, blah, blah. Don't forget to attach the workers' comp affidavit. And then I'd like you to print off that one with the points on it and just make up how you are putting together your 15 points. So just circle them. Like, attached is a business license, a Schedule C, and a 2 1099s I received, or whatever.
Is the affidavit the one we do the signature?
Yes.
Okay.
The initialing. Okay. Yep. Then, the big part of the assignment, well, they're both big, but, so 7 points is given for the paperwork, 13 points for the second part. So in addition, what's just happened to Mr. Hanson's business? From the facts up there. What just happened that was new? Yeah, he got his first commercial contract, right? So really what we're construing is he's been plugging along kind of doing, small gigs, residential gigs, and now he just got a hospital, didn't he? So it's kind of a scale up. And so he's like, oh my gosh, obviously I'm going to need more people. He's wondering right here, should I be using independents or employees for the huge hospital bid? And you're going to write him a memo. Okay, first off, a memo and a letter are different formats. Make sure that you find how to write a memo. Under Word, when you go in File New, one of the options is templates, and they have a bunch of templates, okay, for memos. You don't sign a memo, you don't sign a memo, and neither does it have a greeting line. Dear Mr. Hanson. That's a letter, okay? An internal memo makes sure that you understand what the format is. Something smell funny.
Barbecue.
Oh, it's barbecue. I was thinking this thing was like smoking or something. Like, is that an electrical fire? It's barbecue. Yeah, it is. Okay. Jeez. Okay, so here's the key. Have you guys all been through business writing or intro to writing? Intro to writing. Okay. You have to have an intro paragraph where you kind of set the stage. Why are you even writing this? Okay? Then you need to put the content in. He's asked 2 questions. I'll go over those in a second. So answer both questions concisely. Okay, and this isn't an opinion piece. This is based on things we've studied and statutes, and refer him to the materials that you're relying on. And then your concluding paragraph is your recommendation. And also you need to tell him attached are all these documents that you need to sign, and here's what you need to do. Give him specific instructions. So you're his accounting supervisor. He's relying on you for some facts, for some advice, and to complete some paperwork and tell him what to do next. Here's his questions. Number 1, how can I judge whether these people, right, that are coming on for my hospital bids are independent or an employee. Explain to him what attributes you think are the most important when identifying an individual as an IC or an employee. So what should he primarily be looking at? And then secondly, and I want you to think about this a little bit. This guy he's been plugging along with 5 guys and gals working for him for 10 years. Now he's got a huge hospital bid. What are the advantages to my company of classifying the people as independents versus employees? Okay. And between number 1 and 2, I'm hoping it's going to jump out to you what you should be recommending to him that he does. You have questions? I am brutal with grammar on writing, okay? I know some of you struggle a little bit with spelling or grammar. Have everybody you know read it then. And I can tell you just running it through spell check is generally not the only methodology, okay? So if you struggle with that at all, please make sure. The thing is in business communications, if you have typos or misuse words, seems, where, were, it just discredits you. So really make sure if you struggle with that, go into the writing center down at the Academic Support Center or have people that you respect their writing and their editing capacity look at it, right? Okay. That's really all I have today. Do you want to do payroll tax returns? You want to hang out? You want to?
I do want to ask you a question on the final. What day is that? Like Tuesday and what?
Okay, let me shut this
Sorry.
down. No worries.